I've been thinking about the Yellowjackets finale, and there are definitely some things that I do like, and others that I'm very unsure about. Please keep in mind that these are pretty much first thoughts, and I haven't rewatched any of the seasons yet, so there may be some info I'm missing from past seasons. Let's start off with things that I thought were a little bit questionable. Shauna being the Antler Queen and her rise to power. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate the idea of Shauna's rise to power or anything like that, but I just wish it had a little bit more time to stew. Shauna's character when we first meet her is one who always takes the backseat to her best friend. Even when we see Shauna in the adult timeline, she has more of a subdued presence. Well, I don't know if we can really call it subdued, but she definitely did things more behind the back than she did up front. But that's really until everything from her teen years gets brought up again and we start seeing sides of her that are much more questionable to say the least. So I'm all good with her finding her true form in the wilderness and letting that take over. And it makes sense given everything that she's been through between losing her best friend and her baby. But I just wish we got to see the decline more instead of it being shown in season 3, episode 1, and then knowing exactly where we're going from there. And now she's about to do the same thing in the adult timeline, given what she is writing in her letter in the season finale. I really do wish it just got a bit more time to simmer. Shauna has been through so much and has always said so little, which has never been a good thing. She bottles everything up and she explodes with unimaginable rage, so it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that things would turn out this way in the wilderness. So while I'm okay with the idea of Shauna being the Antler Queen, I also feel like there needs to be some clarification on what the Yellowjackets themselves believe. What do they believe when it comes to wilderness, and what are they just following along with? Do they truly believe in the wilderness anymore, or are they just following Shauna because she's pretty scary? Hit Girl actually being Mari. Now, this is probably my most biased take because I actually really liked Mari, and I wanted to see more of her character develop throughout the 4th season in the teen timeline, and possibly in the adult timeline too. From the first episode of season 3, we had a chase scene where it looked like Mari was being hunted. So you could say it was foreshadowing, but it also turns out that she was just a decoy in that scene. And wouldn't it have been cool for her to be a decoy for the audience as well, given that everyone was already thinking that she was Pit Girl anyway, and then to have it actually be someone else? I genuinely think that Mari could have been an interesting character in direct contrast to Shauna, who she has been shown to be in opposition to from the beginning of the season. So while I do think that Mari being Pit Girl makes sense and is actually a satisfying conclusion to the mystery that most people probably predicted, I just genuinely wanted to see more of her, which I know is full and complete bias on my part. Overall vibes I just didn't really like. Honestly, the biggest problem that I've had with this season is that the show feels like it's losing its flair of what originally made it great. This is criticism for the adult timeline mostly, because honestly, while the actors are still phenomenal, and I have no complaints about them at all, there's just something about the writing or the directing or the editing, I'm not entirely sure, that is not allowing me to care about them to their full capacity. For example, Ty and Van are solely centered around each other this season, and while it makes sense that they want to spend as much time as they have together, given the fact that Van has cancer, there's so much more to the characters that can be explored. Ty just gave up her place as senator, so I would love to see the real impact of that on her character. And we haven't really talked about Ty's family at all. They played a pretty big part in season 1, and we only got one scene with them, and that was only to show that Sammy could sense that other Ty was there and not his real mom. There were so many different angles that we could have taken with her to make me care about her as a more fleshed out, no pun intended, individual, but it just wasn't really there. Even when we found out that other Ty has been there for the majority of the season, I didn't even feel the impact of getting real Ty back, because to me, it kind of just happened. Also, we don't know too much about Van herself other than she owns a shop and has cancer. We know she had money trouble, but nothing else really came of that from what I'm aware. That being said, I had such a strong connection to Van and I genuinely cared about her as a character that I did tear up. No, I did cry. I cried during that scene and I said, no, not Van. No, it can't be Van. I remember that so vividly because it was just so, oh my god. That scene still kind of messes me up. It's genuinely so good, and for a character that I'm saying didn't get enough, story fleshed out, they were just so phenomenal. Both the teen Van and adult Van were just so phenomenal that it was impossible not to be attached to her as a character. But either way, we get a lot of focus on Shauna and her family, which I think is important, but we should also extend that screen time to the other characters, given that this is an ensemble cast. I want to care about the survivors, and that means I want to see how they're actually dealing with who they are and what they've been through. I feel like we got a good bit of that in the first season, but now, not so much. I feel the same way about Melissa too. If they wanted me to care about her, they should have put a little more focus on her relationship with Shauna and really show how different these two people are and gave me more on Melissa in general. Really, I think most of my problems could be solved if we just had a longer season because this is a cast of characters that deserves to be dived into more. Let's get on to a more positive note and talk about the things that I did like. The hunt scene. Having the other Yellowjackets show care and concern for Mari trying to escape felt devastating, since we already knew the outcome, but we could also see that they weren't on board for it. The reveal of Mari as Pit Girl was honestly one of my favorite parts of the episode. As much as I wanted Mari to stay alive, her actress and director did a phenomenal job of recreating the scene from episode 1, and in a way, it felt really satisfying. Between Mari pulling the Queen of Hearts and just knowing this confirmed our suspicions from the beginning, to Mari taking off her clothes to try and cover her tracks from the others, but it just left no doubt in the audience's mind that Mari's fate was sealed. It was definitely one of my favorite scenes in the finale. Natalie, my goat. I mean, what can I really say about Natalie? She has really solidified herself as the best character in the show in my opinion. The last scene with Nat pleading for help through the communication device was so gut-wrenching, and it honestly just left me speechless. Whatever the hell is going on when Lottie says, "You've been here already, Mari, you could let it be different." I feel like there have been a lot of interesting directions the show could have taken, whether it was a supernatural leaning or even a study into a group mindset when survival is the only thing on everyone's brain. But I also feel like they've kind of let me down on every turn with both of those ideas. Shauna being the leader and Antler Queen, who now is in this position of power where no one has a choice and it is her will being thrust upon others, kind of throws those ideas out the window. Honestly, like I said, I don't hate the idea of Shauna being the Antler Queen at all. It's more that the idea needed better execution to pan out in a much more satisfying way. However, there has been this ongoing idea of either an alternate reality or something along those lines, and they have been using this TV flicker effect constantly throughout the show, whether that be the opening itself or the scene where Lottie starts yelling when they are serving up Coach Ben. They don't use a TV flicker effect when Mari runs into Lottie or anything like that, but she does say this.
"You've been here already, Mari. You could let it be different."
And I don't know exactly where it's going, but it's definitely kept me interested enough to keep thinking about it. With all of that being said, there are still a bunch of questions that I do have. And this is mainly going off the direct ending of season 3. Things like how many more hunts do they have after this? When does rescue come? When does Natalie make it back to the group if she ever does? Most of my concerns revolve around the teen timeline, mainly because that's what has interested me the most so far. I am curious about what is going to happen with Shauna's family now that Callie is a murderer and she supposedly has her mother's more villainous tendencies inside of her. Which, honestly, I do genuinely think it was pretty messed up for Lottie to put that in her head. Granted, the outcome didn't help Callie's case at all, but still. I think my main concern regarding the wilderness, especially in the adult timeline, is figuring out why everyone has such a strong belief in it now. Because from what I can tell, there is a great lacking of belief in most of the characters in the teen timeline at the moment. Pretty much all of them were looking to leave, and the ones that kept them there were Lottie, Shauna, and Ty. But in the adult timeline, there is this lingering idea that the wilderness is still a part of them somehow. For example, when Melissa stabs Van, rest in peace my other goat, Melissa says something about believing, but I didn't think she was very confident in it, and was mostly scared of Shauna in the teen timeline. But it's possible I just need to rewatch to get a better idea. Like, I can understand in the first season why there was such a belief in the wilderness when there was a direct correlation of something good or bad happening to all of them depending on the actions they took to either upset or appease the wilderness. And considering that Lottie was pretty much their voice and their leader for a lot of the first and second season, and Lottie's connection to the wilderness is so strong, it makes sense that they would have such a great belief in it as well. But in the third season, it feels like most of the belief is coming only from Lottie, and the others are starting to lose that connection. Granted, there are times where they do feel it throughout, so maybe the seeds planted are still there, and they will begin to grow before everyone gets rescued. Which would make sense, because the air is definitely different after this hunt. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I'm just curious on to how it will be handled. I know Shauna was saying in her letter that everyone was enjoying themselves, but given the feast scene and the aftermath, I think that might just be her, and she is not the most reliable narrator in this case. It's more a look into her true nature and what we'll most likely see from her in the upcoming season. When I'm watching the show, I like to believe that there's an end goal in mind. And from what I'm aware, the Yellowjackets writers did say that they had 5 seasons planned out. And while they might have an ending in mind, there are times when I'm watching the show where it feels like they don't have all the details planned out. But I could be wrong, and I hope I am. but sometimes there's a feeling that they're just writing what comes to mind without having the full picture intact, which would make me a little bit nervous and a little bit sad, especially considering the amazing talent they currently have and had on the show. I like to stay positive with the pieces of media I consume, and while I'm still on board, I am a little bit wary of the future. But once again, I hope they prove me wrong. We can get to the end of the show and all of a sudden everything makes sense, and maybe every single detail was planned out from the beginning, and we'll all see it come to fruition by the end, which would be amazing, and that's all I could ever really hope for.